Hello and welcome to Waylander's Wandering, where it's time for another quick hobby talk. Probably a very quick one, actually. So today I've been on one of the Discord servers I use, which belongs to the Hobby Corner, where we've been talking about our favourite Citadel miniatures. And the first thing that came to my mind was the 1996-1997 Lord of Change in white metal, or was probably closer to a lead pewter back then, which was, to my mind, the first of the great dynamic large miniatures, multi-part metal miniatures for the greater demons of chaos and etc. It was so dynamic and such a great multi-part model. The wings were a little bit heavy and a bit of a bugger to stick on, but that was part of the challenge back then. And the main reason I chose that particular miniature is not only the dynamism and the sheer look of the model, but it was one of the first sort of major releases when I first started working for Games Workshop as a key timer, which was what part-time staff were called back then. So, and I think it was about £25, which is quite a lot when you consider that Warhammer 40,000 second edition boxed game was only £50 then, and so was Warhammer Fantasy Battle. They were both £50 games. I think Blood Bowl and the smaller games back in '96 were probably somewhere between £30 and £40. I mean, it's a long time ago, so memory is a little bit hazy. It's almost 30 years ago now. And I do have a small story about the Lord of Change. We had a young kid who used to come into the store fairly regularly with his mum. We'll call his mum Janine, and we'll call the kid Johnny. In fact, going forward, I think I'm going to call all mums Janine and all of the kids Johnny. They are not the same people. Anyway, I started working for Games Workshop. I was working in a fairly small store in the Midlands, so it was the Midlands region of Games Workshop. And I was working games night with the store manager. So I was running intro games because back then I could do bubbly and enthusiastic at the drop of a hat. And the manager was helping Johnny build his Lord of Change that he had literally just spent weeks and weeks and weeks nagging mum to buy him, who eventually caved. So they're sitting at the table and I'm running games and keeping an eye on the rest of the store, and I can hear the manager talking to little Johnny and telling him how to assemble his miniature and showing him the more difficult parts. But it turns out little Johnny had the attention span of a goldfish and could not listen to save his life. If his life depended on it, little Johnny would have died that night. So we're going to, the manager's going through the construction of this Lord of Change, and glue this here, file this, use a bit of filler to fill in this gap, drill and pin this joint because, you know, it's heavy, and etc, etc. And Johnny's gazing around the store like this and paying zero attention. Eventually, my manager loses all patience and just says, and then we pick it up and throw it at the wall. At which point, the one time that Johnny has been listening all night long, Johnny picks up his Lord of Change, gives it everything, throws it at the wall. Lord of Change explodes everywhere. There are bits of metal showering down across the entire store. It's a little dent in the wall, and my manager is sitting there with his face on, or more like his face on, because, like I say, it was a 25 quid miniature when the box game was only £50 back then. So Janine comes back to the store a little while later because, you know, it's games night and this kind of thing that happened back then. Mum would drop the kids off and go and do the shopping. I mean, it was near Christmas, so it allowed her to get Christmas shopping done, presumably. And we now have to explain what has happened to little Johnny's Lord of Change. Turns out that little Johnny wasn't being an awful child. Little Johnny was actually autistic, which is it's the mid-90s. I don't think I'd ever heard the term before. The blank expression on my manager's face told me that he had definitely never heard the term before. And she explained to us autistic behaviours, which again, we, as, I don't know, retail staff, had never experienced. And I think going forward, personally, and my manager at the time, after learning these things and learning these behaviours and how to deal with them and how to help kids with these behaviours, we came out of it after a kind of scary experience as better people. And little Johnny got another lot of change off the shelf, which my manager paid for, which was, you know, beyond the Call of Duty. So everybody was happy. I hope you've enjoyed this slightly enlightening hobby talk. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. Let's talk about it in the comments down below, or even join me on my Discord server. There's a link for that in the description down below, and it's free, so why not? What could it hurt? I've been Waylander. You've been fantastic. Thank you for staying to the end. Thank you for listening. I love your faces. Goodbye.